Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is the Tuesday edition here of Point of View, and I might just mention it's also part of our Truth Team Week, and so as we talk about the theme of Committed to Truth, we're going to be talking about that. And if you would like to know kind of what's going to happen over the next couple of hours, in just a few minutes we'll be talking with Representative Van Taylor. He had a chance to visit the immigrant intake facility, so we're going to be talking about that and what is the possible crisis that we're facing. How is that affecting even people in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, people in Midland, a variety of other places where these facilities are. So we'll be talking about that with him. If you have not seen the pictures from the facilities, we have posted those now on our Facebook page. You can go to Facebook and then go to Point of View Radio, or you can go to facebook.com/Point of View Radio. Either way, and you will see these pictures that come from Representative Henry Cuellar, who, by the way, is a Democrat, but nevertheless has been trying to push the administration to recognize we have a crisis at the border, and they, of course, keep calling it a challenge. So anyway, we'll be talking with Van Taylor about that. Next hour, we'll have Colonel Alan West with us. We will probably talk a little bit about that issue as well, his article yesterday that came out. As the chairman of the Texas Republican Party, state and individual sovereignty. So he's talking about that. We'll also get into the issue of the military, which we've talked about before. And before we wind down with him, if we can get some time, also he has some comments about reparations. And this is kind of interesting that they are actually paying out reparations in one city in Illinois. They're paying out reparations to black residents to help them fix up their house. And of course, you may have been familiar with the fact that they're oftentimes providing benefits to only African-American farmers. So we'll get into maybe reparations aren't being passed, but in a sense they're sort of making their way out. So we'll talk about what that means with him next hour. And if that's not enough, our good friend Gary Bauer will be with us at the 2 o'clock hour, actually be with us at 2:15. Of course, he was Chief Domestic Policy Advisor for Ronald Reagan, an individual, of course, with American values, and want to talk to him a little bit about the crisis at the border, but mostly he's certainly been an expert on the issues of China. And so we want to get into some of those issues as well. And if you go to our website, you're going to see these articles by Alan West, Gary Bauer's Eating Joe's Lunch, which is what his is called, about what happened when the Chinese and the Americans met in Alaska, what the United States must do to beat China. That's a piece by Senator Tom Cotton. But the one I want to focus on for just a few minutes is echo chamber. And this is a piece by our good friend Michael Brown. Dr. Michael Brown's been on the program a number of times, in which he says, don't trust your own echo chamber. And he says there's no denying that there's tremendous bias in the media. Yeah, think? And he actually quotes from the District Circuit Court Judge Lawrence Silberman, who has been issuing a minority opinion in which he basically says, and I'm just going to summarize quickly, that now, this comes from the judge of the D.C. Circuit Court, that now, essentially, the New York Times and the Washington Post are virtually Democratic Party broadsheets. Really? And even the news section of the Wall Street Journal leans in that same direction. Pretty amazing to me in that regard. And so just back to the point for just a minute, there's a very good piece by our friends at the Wall Street Journal in which they're kind of defending themselves slightly, but they also acknowledge that Judge Lawrence Silberman rejects the argument that was used years ago about the New York Times versus Sullivan, because the argument at the time was you can't sue somebody for sue a news magazine or a newspaper for defamation of character or for any kind of false information unless there was actual malice. And if that sounds familiar, I mean, some of you film buffs might remember the film Absence of Malice. Do you remember that one? 1981, Paul Newman was in it, Sally Field. Wilford Brimley comes in at the end and kind of cleans house and all of that. And the argument has always been, if there was no intended malice, then, after all, we will not hold the newspapers actually guilty or responsible. And what he's pointing out is that this is certainly even more dangerous if you're, for example, a liberal and you only listen to your echo chamber, and then reminds us of how the Media Research Center found that when they educated some of these various voters who voted for Biden, or Joe Biden, in the last election, and told them some positive things about Donald Trump and some negative things about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, 17% of them said they would not have voted for Joe Biden, which essentially means that Donald Trump would have won all of those swing states. So the echo chamber has its deception. Now he goes on, and again, I just got to love Michael Brown, because he goes from saying, okay, that's what the liberals do. Are conservatives ever guilty of that? I thought it was very good. You know, he talks about that as well, that he's seen some situations where conservatives only listen to their echo chamber, and even talks about listening years ago and watching the TV show Hannity and Combs and hearing a very good presentation by Sean Hannity and going, well done, Sean, you made your case. And then Alan Combs steps in and starts tearing apart some of the points that Sean Hannity made. And it reminds me of a very famous verse, Proverbs 18:17. You know, the first person to state his case seems right until another comes and examines him. And so anyway, this is just a great piece to remind you, certainly the liberals are probably most guilty of only listening to their echo chamber. Lots of studies that have been done, even by people that have been on this program, like Jonathan Haidt, demonstrating that oftentimes liberals have a very difficult time understanding conservatives. Conservatives sometimes have a little better understanding of liberals because, after all, most of the major sources of news are kind of liberal, so they have to listen to those. But an email that I just sent out reminds us that back in 2019, so this is a couple of years ago, 41% of Americans said they had a hard time discerning truth watching cable news. They also found that 48% found it hard to know the truth when using social media, and 64% said it was hard to know the truth when listening to elected officials. You think? So if nothing else, as we come to a break, it's one of the reasons why I encourage you to visit our website. First of all, of course, you can find those pictures we've posted on Facebook, but more importantly, there's a banner there that talks about this idea that we're committed to truth. And as I mentioned yesterday, we do have a match for this hour. It's only for this hour because there was really a desire for the donor to encourage people that listen from 12 to 1, for example, on the local AM station, or some of you listening in, to actually have an opportunity to give this hour. So there is a matching fund on the table right now. If you've been waiting to say, well, I'd like to have my dollars doubled, you know, if I make a gift of $100, love to have it be $200. And maybe there's somebody out there that says, you know what, might be able to even give you $500. Well, that would become $1,000. Some of you might want to just simply join at the, what we consider kind of the base level, $1 a day. $30 a month, $360 a year. And if you go to the website, you're going to see there are all sorts of benefits that come. So you can go to the website, which is pointofview.net. If you give it the $30 a month level or the $50 a month level or the $100 a month level, these are different levels, and we send you some very nice gifts just as a thank you. And so I would encourage you to right now, even before we talk to Representative Van Taylor, visit the website, pointofview.net. Of course, we have some people sitting next to the phones waiting for your phone call. 800-347-5151. Every dollar is doubled because we have a match on the table right now. And when we come back, we're going to hear from Representative Van Taylor, member of Congress. He's visited some of these intake facilities for migrants. What has he found? We'll talk with him right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
It may be the most useless number you've never heard of in government. That number is what is called the social cost of carbon. The Obama administration created it years ago as an instrument to argue against fossil fuels and to argue for radical environmental policies. On his first day of office, President Biden issued an executive order resurrecting the Obama-era social cost of carbon. When it was first created, the cost was estimated at $22 a ton. 2 years later, the administration raised it to $36 a ton and eventually landed at $51 a ton as President Obama left office. The Biden administration issued a report last month putting the possible damages at $51 a ton for carbon dioxide emissions. This latest updated version will certainly go higher, since the White House has said that it will factor in commitments under the Paris Climate Treaty and also consider such issues as environmental justice and intergenerational equity. Here's my prediction. By the end of the year, the social cost of carbon will be estimated at more than $100 a ton. There is really no reason to believe this number for the social cost of carbon is based on rigorous science and economic evaluation. I was reading one paper that made the case that the benefits of carbon dioxide actually outweigh the cost substantially. Forests, grasslands, and various crops, for example, show greater growth when there is more carbon dioxide. The next time we have an unusual weather event, expect the social cost of carbon to be mentioned, and a cost of that weather phenomenon will be used to raise the cost even higher. It may be a number you've never heard of, but that's about to change. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
Back once again, and we are going to now spend some time talking with our good friend, Representative Van Taylor, individual, seventh-generation Texan, individual that served with distinction in Iraq, and also an individual that has served first in the Texas House of Representatives, then in the Texas Senate, and of course now represents the 3rd Congressional District in the state of Texas. And so an opportunity for us to hear from him. And Van Taylor, first of all, I understand you've been to the immigrant intake facility, so please tell us what you found.
Yeah, no, I this morning went and visited the Dallas EIS, and what I saw there was truly heartbreaking. We had almost 2,000 boys there, ages 13 to 17, and they're literally all sleeping in one room. You had, thousands of cots. The facility will ultimately hold 2,300 boys in it. This facility the lease for it was signed a week ago, and it will be full tomorrow. These young men were being taken care of at what was described to me by Health and Human Services officials as a crisis level of care. They're sleeping on FEMA cots. They were wearing clothes from hygiene kits that are for disaster survivors, people that survive hurricanes or tornadoes. And it was really breathtaking in scale and just tragic, the human cost of what was going on there.
Wow. One of the things I mentioned just a few minutes ago is that on the Point of View Facebook page, we have a couple of pictures. Now, these come from Representative Henry Cuellar in a different facility, but it shows you what's going on down there. If they make any of these pictures available from where you were, I'd be glad to post those as well. But this is due to a change in policy. We have not had this kind of rush on the border for many years, and I think there's a very good reason for that. And so certainly I want you to keep your human rights and civil rights hat on, but also obviously put on your hat now as a member of Congress, because policy has an impact, and here's a good illustration of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you know, look, I served as a Marine on the U.S. Mexican border in the 90s, back when, you know, border security was a bipartisan issue, when both parties, President Bill Clinton actually was the president when I was sent down there with tens of thousands of other military personnel to secure our border. And we had real problems when I first got into Congress. There was a real surge in people crossing the southern border in 2019. And, first Congress, the Democrats in Congress denied that there was a problem. And then they turned on the president and said that it was his fault that there was a problem, and would not help him to solve the problem. And ultimately, he entered into agreements with Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries, which ultimately got the situation in control. And unfortunately, President Biden, it isn't a policy that has gotten us in trouble. It is getting rid of policies without a replacement, with no plan.
Yeah.
And so that has created what these officials told me. These are people that have spent their whole careers on the border, helping children, as members of HHS, as members of FEMA. They say this is the worst they have ever seen it. This is a crisis level beyond anything that America has ever experienced before, and it's getting worse. It is getting worse day by day by day. Every day it's getting worse.
Well, and again, we've talked about before, so we don't probably need to dredge that up again, the unwillingness to even call it a crisis. I mean, when, again, your current head of Homeland Security was the deputy secretary back then, when you had 1,000 people cross the border, that was considered a crisis. And we've had times when there have been 6,000 people crossing the border, and they won't call it a crisis. But it does illustrate, again, policy matters. And as you point out, the lack of certain policies matter. And it gets us into, of course, things that you have been forced to vote on in Congress. We've talked about H.R. 1. We've talked about the Equality Act. We've talked about various gun control legislation. But you've had two pieces of legislation recently, which at least some individuals have been willing to say are just simply attempts to provide amnesty. And those have been passed by the House of Representatives and are now just sitting there in the Senate. And they have no chance of passing if indeed we maintain the filibuster. But since you've looked at some of those pieces of legislation, tell us what would happen if there is no longer a requirement to have 60 votes for cloture, and you could find enough senators to vote for some of those. Because in the past, you used to call those message bills because there wasn't a chance that they would pass the Senate. A little different set of circumstances, perhaps, in the future. What are your thoughts?
I'll say that it was incredibly reckless of the Democrats in the House to bring two amnesty bills to the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. You've got to understand that the coyotes have evolved. The coyotes are sort of one-off operators 10, 20 years ago, and they've become businesses. They become corporate. They have television ads in trying to induce people to be smuggled into the United States. And passing those bills off the floor of the House of Representatives last week is creating a human crisis, right here in Dallas, Texas. It's creating a healthcare crisis. COVID is a really serious problem. It's creating a security crisis where you have when you don't have a secure border, you do not have a secure country. And encouraging more illegal immigration, which is what those two bills ultimately will be used by the cartels to do, right? They're going to use those bills and say, look, the Americans want you to come. They're going to let you come in their country. It's going to be great. Let us smuggle you up there. And this is creating a humanitarian crisis, and it's just not right to see, the Democrats in Congress literally play with people's lives and say, hey, we're going to encourage this and make a bad problem worse. And that is what is going to happen until we get a policy that works again. And we had one that worked last year under the previous president, and I hope that we can get one that works under this president. Right now, we don't have that, and it's going to get worse, and there's a cost.
Might just mention, if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about Van Taylor, we have a link to his website, vantaylor.house.gov. Of course, you can find that as well. And next hour, we will be talking with the chairman of the Texas Republican Party, Colonel Allen West, and we'll get into some of those issues. But it does seem to me that it's a good illustration of a conversation we need to have. But when you start to ask questions like, well, why did we change that policy? Why do we want to have at least 1 million people crossing the border who have very little education, do not speak English at a time when we have an unemployment? And when the answer is you can't ask that question because it's racist or xenophobic, that's not the kind of conversation we need to be having right now, is it?
Well, I think, again, I really come down to the most basic level. At the end of the day, look, we're a nation of immigrants. The United States of America has benefited from immigration. As far as I know, we are the most generous nation on earth in terms of immigration. We have, we issue 1.1 million new green cards to new individuals every single year. We naturalize 700,000 foreigners, take the oath to become American citizens every single year. And we are actually at the highest point of foreign-born people living in the United States, the highest it's ever been. So we are clearly a generous nation, but we want people to do it legally.
Sure.
And unfortunately, the Biden administration got rid of policies that worked with no replacement, with no plan. And what I saw today was really great professionals and volunteers, right? So you've got the Red Cross volunteering, you've got FEMA officials there, you have Health and Human Services officials there who are being pulled from all over the country to staff a facility to handle the humanitarian health crisis that was created by not having a policy and not having a policy answer for what are we going to do to secure our border? What are we going to do to make sure that we have an orderly way of people to come into this country? And by throwing that out the window, there is a human cost. And, what was frightening to me was to have an HHS official who's commanding the Dallas EIS say, I am trying to stop a pediatric fatality incident from happening on our southern border.
Incredible.
That's a frightening place for us to be as a country, and it's really disappointing.
We'll be right back.
The definition of being committed is dedication, loyalty to a cause, wholeheartedly invested. It can also mean being involuntarily placed in an institution like a mental facility or a prison. Now follow me here. People who believe some of the things now supported by our federal government used to be subjected to the second definition. In Nineveh, the Bible tells us that people couldn't tell the difference between their right hand and their left. But in today's America, we don't even know the difference between a man and a woman. If you're committed to truth, then I urge you today to join the Point of View Truth Team. Kerby is committed to providing you the information you need to stand for what is right and what is ultimately good for everyone. But he cannot stand alone. We need you to be committed, invested in the cause. Sign up today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, and we are privileged to have with us for just a little bit longer Representative Van Taylor, who's had a chance to actually visit this Dallas immigrant intake facility and giving us sort of a hands-on look. You also can see some of the pictures that that we've posted on Facebook come from Representative Henry Cuellar, who's a Democrat, interestingly enough, who's been trying to get some attention and posted some of those pictures, even sent them to Houston papers and even to the Biden administration. So you can see those, but we don't have any from Dallas, but we have a sense of an on-the-spot look. But this is all part of, as you know, our Truth Team Week, and we have the theme this week of Committed to Truth. And I did mention just a few minutes ago that we have a match, and one of the individuals that wanted to help with the match is an individual that actually called in from, of all places, Nashville, Tennessee. Many of the listeners this hour tend to be Texans because of the station in Texas and other places, but I know other people listen in or hear on other parts of the USA Radio Network, and so wanted to thank him for that. The match is still on the table. If you would like to help us out, you can go to the website, pointofview.net, or, of course, the number is 1-800-347-5151. Want to thank, I think his name is John, for his gift. And let me come back to you, Representative Van Taylor, and use it maybe an actual example. I live in your congressional district. I've voted for you ever since you ran for office, first as a representative, then a state senator, now as Congress. But I want to talk about my neighbor across the street who came from Russia. He works for Intel. He went through the actual procedure of coming here, going through the naturalization process, became a citizen of the United States, first, I guess, when he was in California, now here, but works with Intel. But I was thinking, he's got colleagues over there that are in Russia and other people like him in Poland, in Germany, in Canada, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, that are waiting so that they can come to this country and would be bringing with them incredible skills with computers, biotech, and a variety of others. And yet when we have so many people just rushing across the border, it's almost like those are the people that jump in front of the line when you're waiting to go into a facility. And it seems to me that there's just a, if you will, a striking unfairness when we have individuals who could come to this country, want to be good citizens, bring skills that would help this country, and yet we have this rush of the border of individuals which don't bring those kinds of skills, maybe don't even speak English, and that's another real kind of moral issue, isn't it?
No, it certainly is. Again, we have an incredibly generous immigration system in this country. It is the most generous on earth. And I mean, it's interesting to me the number of people that meet with me and say, look, you need to be more thoughtful towards immigrants. And I point out, look, we're issuing over 1 million new green cards every year.
Yes.
We're naturalizing 700,000 people in this country every year. Nobody even comes close to what the United States does. We are a very generous nation. We're a nation of immigrants, and and then they say, wow, that's incredible. That's and so but what unfortunately the Biden administration did, and whether I certainly hope it was inadvertent, but they got rid of policies that worked, where we had where we had a huge border problem in 2019. The Trump administration made some agreements with our neighbors to the south that then in turn really helped to get the border security situation under control, and we were under control, and now we are barreling out of control. We are just barely in control, and we are opening up facilities very rapidly that are very bare bones. I mean, so the facility I was at today, these children, they can't even let them outside. They're not allowed to go outside. They're not allowed to play because they just don't. It hasn't been set up to do that. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the space. It's just the focus of that facility is to help the children to survive.
So sad.
And that is just it is very sad. But again, as a direct result of getting rid of policy without a plan. When you don't have a plan and you get rid of policy that works and you don't have anything to replace it, we're watching the humanitarian crisis be created by this.
Is there a possibility to put together, if you will, some kind of bipartisan coalition? I just mentioned Henry Cuellar. The other day I noticed that you and, if you can believe this, Hakeem Jeffries actually introduced a bill. I mean, you have worked harder than most people I know to try to develop a bipartisan coalition and have worked with some individuals to pass legislation or introduce legislation, which used to be very typical. And to show you how atypical it is, there was an an article a while back in the Dallas Morning News of, well, slap our foreheads. Van Taylor actually is doing some work with bipartisan attempts, but is there any possibility that when we're dealing with this very significant immigration crisis that you and others could put together some kind of bipartisan action to address these issues in a way that necessarily needs to be addressed?
Well, I think, when I look at immigration, I really think that you need to have, this needs to be answered in a series of different bills. When you ask for comprehensive immigration reform, and people have been trying to do that for 20 years and failing.
Yes.
I think it's a sign, maybe we need a different tactic. But I would say more so than that, Kirby, Congress is broken.
Yes.
It is a non-functioning legislative body. And it stands in stark contrast to the legislature in Texas and really most of the legislatures around the country. They pass balanced budgets.
Yes.
They pass bipartisan bills. They get things done. And I think that Congress used to get things done. It was a functional bipartisan budget passing entity, legislative process. It is not that today. I think that functionality has to be restored. It's not that, gee, wouldn't it be nice if Congress worked one day? It's no, it has to work soon. And I'm very focused on that and trying to do that. And building relationships across the aisle is part of that, changing the culture inside Congress. But also you need to change the process and really bring it to a process that encourages bipartisanship.
Yes, a real budget process. When's the last time? You've always given us the number, the last time that Congress passed a budget.
That's a whole other story. But yeah, we had a functional budget process in the United States government until 1975 when they went to the current budgeting system, which is basically a complete bust. It never worked. In 44 years, they've only gotten 4 of them on time, and I think only 6 of them balanced. And so it's a very dysfunctional budgeting process, and it's unique. It's the only budget process like it on planet Earth. No one else uses it, and no one else would study it and decide to use it unless they wanted to really screw it up. So it needs to be replaced with a single bill budget system, which is how everybody else does it. Nobody does it the way the federal government does it, and they tried it because they thought it would be better, and it ended up being much, much, much worse. Worse beyond what anybody thought it could ever be. So.
Just before I let you go, let's mention the fact that you have 100% record of taking any opportunity for individuals that want to meet with you. A while back, I know you had a town hall that you had to do, a telephone town hall, because you have the winter storm recovery. So if people want to connect with you, vantaylor.house.gov. But again, if they would like to know more, what can they do and where can they go?
Sure. No, I have a 100% meeting policy. I actually had a meeting just an hour ago with a constituent who was advocating for an important cause that was extremely important to him. Any constituent of mine who wants to meet with me, they get a meeting. And I think it's my job to listen to the people that I work for. And they have a constitutional right under the First Amendment to petition their government. And so I think it's great when people take the time out of their day to send an email or a letter or a fax or make a phone call or say, hey, I'd like to meet with the congressman. I think I've got something important to say, and I'm honored to listen to them.
Well, again, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for giving us a report on the immigrant intake facility there in Dallas, and I look forward to the next opportunity. Representative Van Taylor.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Kirby.
Let's take a break. And again, this is one of the things that we do here on Point of View. First of all, those of you listening around the country or even around the state of Texas might say, why can't my representative be like that? Because he 100% meeting. I mean, if you want to meet, he meets with you. And again, just a willingness to cross the aisle and work with individuals with whom he oftentimes has some significant disagreements, but can we find some common areas to work on? And so just wanted you to hear from him, and most importantly, hear about what is happening right in the Dallas Immigrant Intake Facility. But if you would like to see some pictures from the one down closer to the border, that's on our Facebook page. It's Facebook/ Facebook.com/Point of View Radio, and you should be able to find it there. We also, I think, have a link on our website here, so you can find it either way, because we just wanted you to see the pictures. You know, those are the pictures that this administration didn't want you to see. But again, kudos to Representative Henry Cuellar. We'll take a break, come back with more right after this.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else, because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
Truth Team Week, and as we've said, committed to truth, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But if nothing else, I just want to encourage you to find some of the material that we've posted on the website. You heard me talk a little bit about this idea of make sure that you aren't necessarily holed up in an echo chamber. That, unfortunately, some of our liberal friends are, but you know, some conservatives are as well. Some atheists are in their own little atheistic echo chamber, but you know, there's also sometimes a Christian echo chamber, and so this is why oftentimes we quote from individuals that you may disagree with. And it kind of brings me back to that, because one of the things that Michael Brown said is at one point he quoted from the New York Times, and then he saw all sorts of posts by saying, well, don't believe this guy, he actually reads fake news. Oh, wait a minute. You know, if you've been listening to Point of View, you know that I have spent a fair amount of time quoting from people that I acknowledge probably don't agree with us on a lot of things. But when Alan Dershowitz and Jonathan Turley and Glenn Greenwald and Jordan Peterson, and I can again go down the list, or even the one I quoted last Friday, Bill Gates is saying some things that we agree with. It makes our case, but sometimes when we quote from those, people go, why are you quoting from them? Because and I think people misunderstood my Friday commentary because I quote from Bill Gates' book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And I had even one person say, I can't believe you quoted from him. Well, first of all, I say he's not exactly the best spokesperson when he has a 66,000 square foot home and a private jet company and all the rest. But he also, when he starts taking us through some of this, really points out what it would indeed take if you even wanted to and believe that we had to get to a zero carbon climate by the middle of this century. And my commentary today is an attempt to say, this is how this administration is going to try to do it. So again, I give you some history from the Obama administration, then I talk about what's going on in the Biden administration. And again, the tendency sometimes to say, well, why are you quoting from Joe Biden? I don't even know if he should be the president. Well, okay, but this is how they're going to sneak some of this through. And this is why we want you, if nothing else, to develop a level of discernment. As we pointed out in the email that just went out a while ago, maybe it landed in your inbox, 41% of Americans say they have a hard time discerning truth when listening to cable news. That number gets up to 48% when you're talking about social media, and it gets up as high as 64% when we're talking about trying to discern truth when listening to elected officials. And this was a survey done by the Pew Research Center back in 2019. So that's like, 2 years old? So it's probably worse as well. So that's one of the reasons why we really encourage you to consider what you might do to support Point of View. We really believe that we are providing you with a source of truth that is very hard to find in many other places. And if you want to join with us, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we do have a match which was specifically dedicated to this hour. We recognize in just a few minutes we're going to have our national hour, and we'll have some that have been provided by other donors to provide a match. So that is certainly the case. But there was a desire to get some people that listen to this hour from 12 to 1 Central Time. I just mentioned a minute ago, one of the people that joined with us isn't even in the Texas area, from Nashville, Tennessee. And I've met people all over the country that tend to tune into this hour because they like to hear all 3 hours, which is great. We do tend to focus a little more on Texas, but even so, much of what happens in Texas is nationwide. But if you want to join with us, let me just mention some of those giving levels. I haven't really talked about that much. Many of you that have been listening before perhaps have heard that, but I recognize some of you listening this hour may be not as familiar because we haven't been on the local station you're listening to as often as we have been nationally. And if you join at $1 a day, $30 a month, that becomes part of the Truth Team. And that means you receive automatically our Outlook magazine each month. But one of the other things we've begun to do is that we are now making available, even at that level, these booklets. I'm holding up the most recent one. Just came out, and we haven't even mailed them yet. So if you say, I didn't get this one yet, it's coming. Just look for it in your mailbox. This one's on the crisis in education. And we're making those booklets available to you even at the very low level of $1 a day, $30 a month. So then some have joined us in the past at $50 a month. They receive the booklets. Well, now we have, in addition to those, and the Outlook and the booklets, a premium versatile bag, one style for the ladies and another style for the guys. Although if you're a woman, you want to get the canvas bag or vice versa, that's fine. And you are welcome to choose those as well. So that's just another way to say thank you. But I have met a few of you that have joined at the $100 a month level, the century level. So you receive all the things we've mentioned, which again is the Outlook magazine, the booklets, the bag, as well as then we fill the bag up with all sorts of point of view resources, which include many of these booklets on the table, many of the books, and the mug, the various resources that are all there. So again, I know you don't give to get, but those are ways of saying thank you. And if you say, well, I'd like to see what you actually are talking about, go to the website, which is pointofview.net. click on that button there that talks about truth. And as you scroll down, you can see the Outlook magazines, you can see the booklets, you can see the messenger bag, the laptop bag, you can see the Yeti tumbler, and all sorts of other resources. And then you can join at whatever level. Now, if you want to do that on the computer, I just did it yesterday because I donate to Point of View. I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not doing. And it took me, I don't even think it took 2 minutes. And there's different payment amounts, and you can either decide to give on a monthly basis, which we certainly would encourage. But in my case, I just gave on a one-time basis. So I hit the word other amount and said, once per year, and then actually put it down and sent it off, and it was done. So it's very easy. If you'd like to talk to someone and maybe get some more questions answered, that number is 800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151. And if you go to the website today, I am talking about the social cost of carbon. I call it the most useless number you have never heard of in government. Because, first of all, you've probably never heard of the social cost of carbon. As I finish the commentary, I point out, I'm afraid you're going to hear it. But it's a useless number because it's a number that changes just at a whim. When it was first created and used kind of as an instrument to start arguing against fossil fuels and to argue for very radical environmental policies like the Green New Deal, originally under the Obama administration, they talked about it being $22 a ton. Then it was raised to $36 a ton. By the time President Obama left office, it was $51 a ton. Is the cost going up? No, it's just they're just adding more things to it, and it's just as subjective, I think, as you can imagine. And then it was completely eliminated under the Trump administration. Elections have consequences, but then with the election of Joe Biden, it's back again. And he said, well, last month they issued a report calling for the number to be, again, $51 a ton, but they're already talking about the fact that they want to increase that because they want to factor in commitments to the Paris Climate Accord, the issues of economic justice, intergenerational equity. I'm sure that gets into the whole issue of critical race theory. And most people figure by the end of the year, it might even be, I don't know, could be $100 per ton. And I think it's just, again, an attempt to try to figure out a way to move a radical environmental agenda. And so I just point out that this may be a useless number, and it is, that you've never heard of. But given the fact that, especially next time we have some kind of unusual weather phenomenon, they'll raise the number again, and pretty soon you'll be hearing about the social cost of carbon. So you heard about it first here on Point of View. It's the kind of information we want to provide to you. And one last time, let me just encourage you as we go to a break, perfect time to give us a call, 800-347-5151. That's again, 1-800-347-5151. Or you can go to the website, pointofview.net. We have a match on the table. We'll be back right after this.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is the Tuesday edition of Point of View, and we are so grateful that you are with us today. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to cover a lot of topics, and so I hope you'll just kind of strap in and get ready to go. In just a few minutes, we're going to have Colonel Alan West with us, and he's going to be addressing a number of issues, not only an individual that has served in Congress and in the military, but is also the chairman of the Texas Republican Party and a number of other things that we'll talk about. But he talks about this issue of the state and individual sovereignty. What about this crisis at the border, and what is that doing in his home state of Texas? So we'll talk about that. Next hour, we're going to have Gary Bauer with us, and we'll get into some of the concerns he has, not only about this issue of immigration, but we're going to get into the issue of China. Matter of fact, one of the pieces we've posted there, Eating Joe's Lunch. It's talking about that meeting between the Americans and the Chinese there in Alaska. Also posted a piece by Senator Tom Cotton on what the U.S. must do to beat China. But I want to scroll down to another issue that I thought we might talk about. It's a piece by Dr. Michael Brown, which says, don't trust the safety of your own echo chamber. And the point he's making is that if we really want to have discernment, and that's something I've written to you about. You may have received an email from me, which I point out that the Pew Research Center a while back did a survey, and this actually goes back 2 years ago, so the numbers are probably higher now. They found that 41% of Americans say they have a hard time discerning truth while watching cable news. That number gets up to 48% when trying to interact with social media, and it gets to be a high of 64% who don't know how to discern truth when listening to an elected official, you think? And here, Michael Brown says, you don't want individuals to be in what they call a leftist echo chamber. And he quotes, interestingly enough, from a judge in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals who we mentioned yesterday when we were talking with Robert Knight, and that is Lawrence Silberman, who is really challenging the original ideas that you can't really sue the newspapers because, after all, they cannot be sued unless there was actual malice. You might even remember, if those of you a bit older, there was a movie called Absence of Malice in 1981. It had Paul Newman and Sally Field and a number of others. And his argument was this may have been appropriate back then, but his argument now is the New York Times and the Washington Post are virtually Democratic Party broadsheets in which they lean the same direction, and as a result, you can't necessarily accept them as being true. So one of the reasons why we've encouraged many of you to consider what you might do to support Point of View, and the reason our theme this week for Truth Team is Committed to Truth, is you need to find some places where you can find some truth, where there's some discernment. And so that relates to my email. It also relates to what Michael Brown says, because he gives us lots of examples of how people living in this echo chamber, for example, we've talked about this before, the Media Research Center found that once you educated some of these Biden supporters and voters in some of the swing states, up to 17% of them said, well, they might not have voted that way, but they lived in this echo chamber. And he says, recognize there's a liberal echo chamber. Sometimes there's a right-wing echo chamber. My lesson to you is don't be like them. Read some of these articles that we are talking about. And sometimes you will see me quoting from people that we might not necessarily agree with, but nevertheless want you to hear what the other side is saying. And that's what we try to do here on Point of View. But to help us this week during our Truth Team, as we try to talk about truth and discernment, we have once again in studio with us Brad Fisk. And Brad, welcome back, and we're glad you're here.
I am so excited to be here because this is going to be a grand week. It already has started out well, and we are looking, Kerby, for others who are committed to truth. That's our theme, and it's going to carry through the whole week. Committed to truth. My friend, are you committed to truth? If so, could you help us financially continue doing the work God has called us to do? 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. It's a 2 to 3 minute phone call to get your gift planted with us. Thank you so much. You can also go to pointofview.net.
I might just mention, as you go to pointofview.net, we have a banner there. If you click on that, that might explain some of the various gifts we would like to send to you. They're pretty simple. We encourage you that if you want to join at the $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year level, you'll receive, of course, our Outlook magazine and these booklets. I'm holding up the most recent one. We're just now putting in the mail on Crisis in Education. If you haven't received it yet, well, we just got them yesterday, and we're mailing them out, so we'll look for them in the mail. And then at the $50 a month level, we add to that a premium bag. Yeah, one for the women, one for the men, but you can choose whichever ones you want. And then at the $100 level, we fill that bag up of all sorts of goodies, but you can see all the things that will go in there. And I know you don't give to get, but we certainly wanted to say thank you for your gift of any amount, and we'll leave that to you. But when we're talking about this issue of truth, it's going to be a theme running through this today. We're going to be talking with Colonel Alan West. We're going to be talking with Gary Bauer. One of the things you recognize is the need to hear both sides, and you will hear me sometimes quote from Alan Dershowitz. Doesn't necessarily agree with a lot of things we talk about. Jonathan Turley, a law professor at George Washington University. Jordan Peterson, a variety of others. Sometimes I'm quoting from the New York Times or the Washington Post. And it's interesting here because Michael Brown said somebody was upset with him because he had one quote from the New York Times and said, well, we don't believe this guy because he quotes from fake news. Well, when they actually get it right, even a stopped clock is right twice a day, right? That's true. That's the case. And he reminds us of one time watching in Hannity and Combs and hearing Sean Hannity doing a great job, and at the end thinking, well done, Sean. And then he hears Alan Combs present and start taking apart all of that. And it reminded me, if nothing else, Brad, of Proverbs 18:17. When one person states his case, it seems right until another person examines him. So I want to explain that every once in a while we're going to quote from some people you might not necessarily agree with, because if nothing else, sometimes they're making our case as strongly or even stronger than we can. And that's what we want to do. We're dedicated to truth. And when we have good arguments, we're going to share them. When we think your argument isn't so good, we're going to say, there's probably a better argument out there than that. And so that's the kind of dedication we have, because we are this week committed to truth. Amen. One more time, how can people respond just before we take a break?
We invite you to the website, of course, at pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. That's very convenient. You can also call and get your gift in that way at 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. It's a 2 to 3 minute phone call. We're asking you at least consider that $1 a day. What a great entry level kind of thing to be a part of our truth team. It's critical that we grow this team. Why? Well, go ahead and just watch the evening news and read some newspapers in the secular press, and you'll know why. I mean, we really need to have your commitment to us. Committed to truth. That's what this is about. Pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or 800-347-5151.
I might just mention, when we come back from the break, Colonel Alan West will be with us. People say I wear a lot of hats. Here's a man that served in the military, of course, in the Army, actually was a member of Congress, Florida's 22nd District, right at the moment, chairman of the Texas Republican Party, CEO of the Hope Center, and all sorts of other things that I won't go into, but posted his very good piece on state and individual sovereignty. What about this crisis at the border? What about the issue of the military? I'm looking forward to all those conversations with him. And so that's why you need to give us a call right now, 800-347-5151. Or, of course, the website is pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
It may be the most useless number you've never heard of in government. That number is what is called the social cost of carbon. The Obama administration created it years ago as an instrument to argue against fossil fuels and to argue for radical environmental policies. On his first day of office, President Biden issued an executive order resurrecting the Obama-era social cost of carbon. When it was first created, the cost was estimated at $22 a ton. 2 years later, the administration raised it to $36 a ton and eventually landed at $51 a ton as President Obama left office. The Biden administration issued a report last month putting the possible damages at $51 a ton for carbon dioxide emissions. This latest updated version will certainly go higher, since the White House has said that it will factor in commitments under the Paris Climate Treaty and also consider such issues as environmental justice and intergenerational equity. Here's my prediction. By the end of the year, the social cost of carbon will be estimated at more than $100 a ton. There is really no reason to believe this number for the social cost of carbon is based on rigorous science and economic evaluation. I was reading one paper that made the case that the benefits of carbon dioxide actually outweigh the cost substantially. Forests, grasslands, and various crops, for example, show greater growth when there is more carbon dioxide. The next time we have an unusual weather event, expect the social cost of carbon to be mentioned, and a cost of that weather phenomenon will be used to raise the cost even higher. It may be a number you've never heard of, but that's about to change. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
We all know how rare it is to get the sort of cutting-edge biblical analysis of current events and cultural issues that you get every single day at Point of View. But Point of View can't do it without the support of listeners. I encourage it. If you benefit from Point of View, show your appreciation by praying for the ministry and seriously consider financially supporting Point of View. The church needs what it provides.
John Snow Street will be with us actually tomorrow, I believe, and so looking forward to that conversation. Awesome. But I've been looking forward to this one right now, Brad, as we talk with Colonel Alan West. But give us kind of an update real quickly, because this is an opportunity during this Truth Team Week to actually join with us.
Write this number down and call in the next break, 800-347-5151. We really must have Point of View's voice continue into the future, and your gift will help us get there.
Colonel Allen West is certainly an individual I've been looking forward to hearing from, because we've been talking about the slandering of the military last week. Then I noticed Evanston, Illinois is the first American city to pay reparations to black residents. I want to get his comments. But we've also posted his piece today on state and individual sovereignty as we talk about the crisis at the border and the number of children and teenagers actually in these facilities, and had some report there as well. Colonel Allen West served 22 years in the United States Army, also represented Congress in the 22nd District of Florida, an individual that is now the CEO of the Hope Center and also chairman of the Texas Republican Party. So, Colonel Allen West, always great to have you on the program.
It's good to be with you, Kirby. Thank you so much. And just want to echo a lot of the comments when you talk about, this Truth Team week and every single week, because you're preaching the truth. It's so important that we have your voice. It's so important that we have Point of View Radio out there to provide that biblical perspective for Christians when you look at the issues of the day. And so you're one of the smartest guys out there. And I wish that they had picked you to replace Rush Limbaugh. I think that you would have done a fantastic job.
Amen.
What a nice comment. Well, you were a pretty smart guy as well, even if you did go to the University of Tennessee. Of course, we always have fun with that one, don't we? But let's get into your piece. We did post this because this was a message to many of our listeners in Texas, but we broadcast in 36 states. So a lot of people haven't a chance to see your state and individual sovereignty, because we have thousands and thousands of illegal immigrant males being put in the Dallas Convention Center. And you said, maybe there's something we should do. Maybe it's coming back to the 10th Amendment. Can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that the Founding Fathers sat down and they, understood and they established the precedent that in the 10th Amendment that all of those powers not designated to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people. And when you look at this complete abdication of the constitutional duty to protect the sovereignty of the United States of America, which since we have a 1,200-mile border that we share with a foreign nation here in Texas, the sovereignty of the state of Texas, the 10th Amendment clearly says that Texas, should be doing the things that are necessary to protect, itself and its people as a sovereign state. And furthermore, as I wrote in that piece, if you go to Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3 of the Constitution, it articulates when a state can take an action, especially when you see this abdication of its responsibilities from the federal government. The Founding Fathers called it an invasion, and I think that anytime you have hundreds of thousands of people pouring across your border and you did not invite them, that's an invasion. That is what illegal immigration is all about. And if the Biden administration wants to try to enact an open borders policy by executive order, the state of Texas needs to stand up and say no, especially when you see that 3,000 illegal immigrant males, we really don't know their ages, but illegal immigrant males have been dumped here to K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center, another 1,000 out in Midland. We know that we had some 100 to 110 that were released who were COVID positive in the Brownsville, Texas sector. This is a complete destabilization of Texas and an undermining of our state sovereignty.
One of the things that you wrote about the previous Monday was about the idea of boldness, and fortune does favor the bold. It does seem to me, if nothing else, Alan, that there is one thing that seems to be in short supply, and that's courage and boldness. And that is not just at the level of some of our elected officials, but with this cancel culture, my commentary yesterday, if we just don't have some courage and push back, this is going to run over us. So that's something you've been preaching about over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely right. What you see is this radical minority that is out there, promulgating this critical race theory and this cancel culture. Kirby, you and I grew up, Speedy Gonzalez, when I ran track in high school, if someone called you Speedy Gonzalez, that was a compliment. That means you were very fast. Or if you had an issue with how you smelled, we called you Pepe Le Pew. It had nothing to do with racism. It was just something funny. And it was just kind of like ribbing, each other. But now look at what we have come to, where for the book that so many of us learn to read from, Dr. Seuss books. Now all of a sudden they have to be, censored. We've been down this road before throughout history, where you have this minority that all of a sudden rises to totalitarian power, and they start to determine and dictate what is acceptable and what is not. My 2.5 years in Afghanistan, I saw council culture. It was called the Taliban. Not too many years ago, we saw council culture. It was called ISIS. And now we have it right here on our doorsteps. And one of the things that I'm sure you've talked about is H.R. 5. We need to be very concerned about the Equality Act, because the Equality Act is a council culture move on our Christian faith.
Let's talk about that for just a minute. I thought maybe that'd be a good way to go. H.R. 1, which we encourage people to write to their two senators about. H.R. 5, of course, the H.R. 1 is on the election and taking the worst examples of the 2020 election and nationalize them. H.R. 5, the Equality Act, which is nothing about equality and everything about removing religious liberty. And even in this piece, you also talk about H.R. 8, and we had two amnesty bills. We have two gun control bills. All of these have passed through the House of Representatives. And at least at the moment, we're fortunate because the filibuster requires that you get 60 votes to end debate. But if the filibuster is gone, I think all of these pieces of legislation that you've been referring to could change America in a way that we wouldn't even recognize it a few years from now. What's your thoughts?
No, you're absolutely right. And Katie barred a door if they were to get rid of the filibuster. And again, that's why it's so important that we understand, our sovereignty as states. The Founding Fathers did everything they possibly could in the Constitution to say, how can we make sure that they don't screw this thing up? But it comes back to what you just said. It's all about the courage. And so when you read the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution, there are two very important words in the Supremacy Clause. It says pursuant thereof. The laws or whatever comes down from the federal government, it is supreme over states if it's pursuant thereof to the fundamental principles of the Constitution. When it is not, states have the ability, the right, 10th Amendment and other things, to be able to use constitutional nullification. And where have you seen that? You have seen the North Dakota state legislature pass that, saying that they're not going to follow these executive orders that the Biden administration is pushing down, because we're a constitutional republic, not a monarchy. You don't rule over us by edicts, orders, mandates, and decrees. You're supposed to govern through the legislative process. And so when you look at these things, H.R. 1 is a complete, that's not an enumerated power to the federal government to do elections. That's a state right. That goes down to our counties. They execute elections. And so H.R. 1 tries to nationalize, federalize elections. And all of those unconstitutional practices that you saw in November 2020, they're trying to codify it into law, which is completely wrong.
Colonel Alan West with us. He'll be back after the break. But Brad Fisk, you have an announcement, don't you?
I do. We've got some friends of the ministry that got together to encourage you to call and give with a $1,000 match challenge. And that's for this hour. And so we encourage you to call and have your dollars doubled at 800-347-5151. Again, every dollar up to $1,000 is doubled. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can also double your money at pointofview.net. Pointofview.net.
Let me just encourage you to get some of the information that we are making available as you go to the website. You can, of course, make your pledge, but also if you go to this piece, we also have a link to Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and that will take you to his website. And also, then, in addition to that, we've also posted his piece that really goes into more detail on state and individual sovereignty. When we come back, I want to get his comments about the military and a variety of other issues, but this is a perfect time for you to give us a call. 800-347-5151, a match on the table, so every dollar is doubled, and we hope that you'll consider a one-time gift or maybe even join us on the Truth Team. $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. 1-800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. You find all sorts of great information there, and we'll be back with Colonel Alan West right after this.
The definition of being committed is dedication, loyalty to a cause, wholeheartedly invested. It can also mean being involuntarily placed in an institution like a mental facility or a prison. Now follow me here. People who believe some of the things now supported by our federal government used to be subjected to the second definition. In Nineveh, the Bible tells us that people couldn't tell the difference between their right hand and their left. But in today's America, we don't even know the difference between a man and a woman. If you're committed to truth, then I urge you today to join the Point of View Truth Team. Kerby is committed to providing you the information you need to stand for what is right and what is ultimately good for everyone. But he cannot stand alone. We need you to be committed, invested in the cause. Sign up today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Tuesday edition. If you would like to join with us, we hope you would, because that number is 800-347-5151 for your pledge, or pointofview.net. Brad Fisk in studio. We have a match on the table.
We do a $1,000 match. It's dollar for dollar. Very simply, it means this. If you want to join the Truth Team at $1 a day, your gift becomes $2 a day. It even works in monthly cycles. It's really cool. And if you want to give $100, it becomes $200. But you know, my friend, we really do need you, because we are just so concerned about what the future is going to be. The voice of Point of View must continue and grow and thrive. Why? Because we believe in biblical truth. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. 5151.
Colonel Alan West with us, and he comes from a number of generations of people that have served in the military. And Alan, I've been wanting to talk to you about this for some time. There was a whole flap that kind of developed when Tucker Carlson did a little bit of critique of a speech given by President Joe Biden about maternity uniforms for those who are pilots and a variety of other things. And this piece that we posted the other day, slandering the U.S. military, again, by McCubbin Thomas Owens, an individual, was a Vietnam vet. And the reason it says again is we know how the military has sometimes been vilified by individuals, but at the same time, some of the conversation has to do with the fact that the current individuals who are in charge of our military are doing some things that don't seem to be in the best interest of having a fighting force. And I would just love to get your thoughts, having served in the military, having been in Congress, and even addressing some of that, and even being instrumental in the passage of the National Defense Authorization Acts. What are your thoughts about this flap right now with the military?
Well, I am very concerned about, the social engineering of our military part two. The first one was during the 8 years of the Obama administration. Look, I have known soldiers that were in the military that, they were married to other service member, or they were single moms, they were pregnant, and they performed their duties. Of course, they were restricted in some of the things that they could do as their pregnancies advanced, but that equality of opportunity is there. What I'm really distressed about is the fact that we saw members of the military, active duty members of the military, attacking a political commentator.
Yes.
That's not what we're supposed to be doing in the military. That's a complete violation of the Hatch Act. We're not supposed to get involved in political discourse one way or the other. So that is something that is very disconcerting. The other thing that I find disturbing is the fact that I just saw that the Secretary of Defense, former General Lloyd Austin, with whom I served with at Fort Bragg when he was a Airborne Brigade commander.
I remember that.
He's saying that now the military has to focus on, advancing the LGBTQI whatever agenda. And I'm thinking the charge for the United States military is to fight and win our wars and defend our country. It's not about implementing social agendas and, this whole thing about gender dysphoria. And let's call it the right thing. It's not about transgenderism. It's a mental condition called gender dysphoria. And we even have a chaplain that's right down there in Fort Hood, Texas, that's being investigated because he posted on his own personal social media site that he did not agree with this transgender issue, that is this gender dysphoria issue that the Biden administration is pushing on the military. Now, I don't get it. So in active duty, folks can attack a political commentator, but someone on their own private Facebook platform, they can't speak out against this policy, and they're a chaplain. And then the other thing that, really we should be concerned about is the politicization of our military, where we see now this desire to go and scrub Facebook and social media platforms, looking for only conservative speech, conservative thought, not leftist thought. And so what's next for our military? Commissars political officers. So, we're going down a very dangerous path because our men and women in uniform take an oath to the Constitution. It seems that the left now is trying to get them to take an oath to them and their ideology.
Let's talk about this idea of slandering the military, because that, I think, comes also from Lloyd Austin, again, Secretary of Defense, a retired Army general, in which he sure seemed to saying, we're going to look for anybody that might believe in white supremacy or all the rest. And there seems to be almost a conflating of the military with racism and white supremacy. So that's another concern, and that doesn't come from outside the military. It's happening inside the military, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and again, I think that that's one of the agenda items coming from the left to go into the military and start purging and looking for these things. Didn't say anything about folks that support Black Lives Matter, which is a Marxist organization, which I would say Marxism seeks to undermine our Constitution. Didn't say anything about support to Antifa, which we know is a domestic terrorist organization. How funny no one from the left was really concerned about all the riots and the attacks on federal buildings that we saw last summer, and the police who were attacked and assailed, and some lost their lives. So this hypocrisy is very dangerous in and of itself. It's not laughable. It's very dangerous because what we could end up seeing is a military that is completely, like I said, politicized. And I don't think the Biden administration is getting off to a good foot with our military when you are having them sleep in parking garages and you're feeding them uncooked food with metal shavings.
Yeah, unbelievable. We only have a few minutes left. I wanted to maybe have you comment about what you see for the future. We talked about H.R. 1, H.R. 5, H.R. 8. Of course, we talked about the military. Of course, there's a whole push for reparations. And most importantly, why we need to support Point of View, because it seems to me that what we were talking about is a real challenge. But you're not fatalistic any more than I am. Matter of fact, I've got an email going out tomorrow which is saying I'm pretty optimistic. I think we've got some great opportunities to really fight this battle, but we need some courage, we need some boldness, and we need the right facts, don't we?
You just hit it right on the head, and that's why your show, your program is so important, because you arm people with those facts. You inform people, you educate people, and therefore they can be activated. And let me just talk about this reparations thing. Kerby, in 1961, I was born in a blacks-only hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. And my dad was born in 1920 down south. We don't need reparations. This is about the left trying to make blacks even further perpetuating this victimization. And that's something we need to speak out about. But again, it takes courage. Again, it takes the boldness. And we cannot continue to retreat when we see these delusional advances of the progressive socialist left. So what am I encouraged about? I am encouraged that I see more people that are getting engaged in the legislative process, getting engaged in understanding the Constitution, getting engaged in understanding the right relationships between the states, the people, and the federal government. And so I think that, as Admiral Yamamoto has said, that they have awakened the sleeping giant.
I think so. And again, for people saying, well, that's not going to happen. First of all, Brad and I have been talking off air about the fact that if you're an African-American farmer, you get certain benefits. But this one comes out of the Evanston City Council that voted on Monday to actually distribute $400,000 only to black households as a form of reparation. In other words, you can be eligible for home repairs, but only if you're African American. And I thought we wanted a colorblind society, Colonel West.
Well, that's what Martin Luther King said, that he wanted a nation where we were judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. And I can tell you something, there's going to be a lot of class action lawsuits coming against the folks there in Evanston, because if I'm a white American that never, I wasn't alive 200 some odd years ago, so why am I paying for the home improvements of one person's house with my taxpayer dollars? That's supposed to be going to the safety and security and the services of that municipality for everyone.
I might just mention again, we have your article that we mentioned. We also have a link to your website, and if people like to correspond with you, that is the case. Thank you, first of all, for being on the program. Thank you for being a co-host, even a guest host, and I look forward to next time when we can get you in studio. But thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
It's a pleasure, Kerby. You're one of the greatest, and Point of View Radio is fantastic. So God bless you, and thank you.
Colonel Alan West, and of course he's also, I might just mention, CEO of the Hope Center, which is where about 60 different ministries are gathered. They're doing a kind of a Hope Center up there in Colorado Springs.
They are. A Focus building is being used in the old Focus building, Focus on the Family. But, As I hear him talk, it's so easy to slip into being despair,
right,
and negative, and woe is me. That's not the spirit that pervades this place.
That's not the spirit that created the ministry or
That's right.
created the organization or even created the country itself. That's why.
We are here
Yeah.
to serve you with information that you can trust, that is biblically based every single day, every single program. And so they're asking you the question, will you commit to real biblical truth going forward from here? If the answer is yes, then we desperately need to hear from you with your dollars to continue to do what we do. Pointofview.net, you can give there, or you can give us a call. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. We really do need to hear from you.
And we need to hear from you right now because, as I mentioned, next hour we got Gary Bauer. We're going to talk about China and all sorts of issues that we have not discussed. So this is a perfect time to make that phone call so you don't miss anything. 800-347-5151. And it's very easy. Just simply go to the website, pointofview.net. We'll come back with some final comments before we get Gary Bauer right after this.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
As a salesman traveling in South Florida in my car a lot of time, and as a new Christian, I was always being discipled by Christian stations. One time I came upon Point of View with Marlon Maddox, and that program was tremendous influence in my life. I was discipled tremendously. And then through various factors, I lost track of the program, changes of radio station down in South Florida, until recently, out of curiosity, I wondered if the Point of View program, whatever happened to it, until I researched it and found out that it was still on. So I'm tuning in, I'm listening to Point of View now. It's brought back a flood of memories, and it continues great with Kerby Anderson, and it's a tremendous program, and I'm highly encouraged by it, and I encourage everyone to listen to it.
Again, great testimony. And as I get a chance to travel around sometimes to visit some radio stations, visit with some of our donors, some of them go all the way back to Marlon Maddox, because after all, we're coming up on almost 50 years of broadcasting.
That's amazing.
You know, it was so funny that Alan West talked about Rush Limbaugh. I mean, before there was a Rush Limbaugh, there was a Marlon Maddox. Before there was a Sean Hannity, there was a Marlon Maddox. And I didn't join him as a guest until I think it was 1980, and then started being a guest host in 1986. And I started doing the math, and that's a third of a century even for me. So
that's a long time.
That is a long time. And again, just the legacy of that as well. If we needed it back then, we need it even more now.
That's right.
And that's why we encourage people to recognize that the theme this week is committed to truth, and we are committed to truth.
We are, and it's just so exciting to see how the Lord is using Point of View in people's lives. We have hundreds and thousands of testimonies over the years of people being blessed and having information come to them they're not going to hear anywhere else. So please give. And by the way, do monthly, if you would. $50 a month will get you a premium versatile bag. $1 a day, $360 for the year. We encourage you to give monthly, give singly, any way God leads. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
I just want to commend you guys on your program. I love listening to you.
I want to say, first of all, that I really enjoyed the Millennial Roundtable, and I love the program altogether. I think Kerby is great, and I really appreciate all of y'all, all that y'all do, and the truth that y'all put out.
I think you guys and gals are more right on about the assessment of this country right now than anything I've heard. I go home and I tell my wife, you've got to hear what they're talking about on the show.
Point of View is actually a lifeline for me, and I'm actually a third-generation Point of View listener. I homeschool my girls, and I don't think I could do what I do without Point of View on a daily basis. Without ministries like Point of View, we really don't have much hope for the future of our children, our grandchildren. They just really help on a daily basis protect the freedoms that we enjoy today. I can't see a better way to invest in our future than to support Point of View.
Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it. Not only that, I want to encourage everybody listening to donate, because without our donations, I know that y'all won't be able to stay on the air, and it's just, I don't know where we get this kind of information if it wasn't from y'all.
Point of View Truth Team.
Back once again, we do have a match on the table, so I hope that you will join with us. Going to have a break at the top of the hour, and that is a perfect time for you to call. Although, even as you're listening, you can go on the computer, and I know individuals that, even as they listen to the program, just go on the computer and they make their pledge, and that is the opportunity. And I do want you to get ready for the next hour. We don't always talk about China. I think we're going to have to do more of that. We've had Gordon Chang on the program. We're going to have Gary Bauer on. But I was struck, Brad, by the fact, here's an article here by Ian Hayworth. Biden is weak and our enemies know it. And you might think, well, that's just his opinion. Okay, this one comes from the Wall Street Journal. A lecture in Alaska shows the adversaries sense U.S. weakness. Wow. And we have posted a piece here by Tom Cotton. He's a senator from Arkansas. Getting to like him more and more every day. What the United States must do to beat China. And also one by Gary Bauer, who you've known for decades because you worked with him at Focus on the Family, Eating Joe's Lunch. So we're going to get into a little of that. I know we don't always think about foreign policy, but we should, because in some respects that is our adversary. And right now it seems like the U.S. military is more concerned about their adversary, Tucker Carlson, than they are about the real adversary, which is China. And that's the kind of material we cover, as well as we just heard from people saying, this has helped me with homeschooling. This has helped me with the subject of education. This has helped me understand the pro-life issue. But all of that is what you're supporting when you actually actually join with us. And I want to challenge some people to think about joining us monthly. Simple as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year, you can join the Truth Team.
That's right. And along with that, you'll be getting materials. You're going to be getting additional content and access to content. And if you want to bump it up to $50 a month, that's kind of the sweet spot. That $50 a month will actually, we got a thank you gift this year that is out of this world. It's
so
wonderful.
Nice.
These are basically versatile premium bags. They have a ladies style and a guys style. So for the ladies and the guys, we got you covered. Go to the website at pointofview.net, and the details of those gifts are there. But most important, give. Call us and give. Join us. Won't you help us stand and have a voice for the coming time? 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or you can always give online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
One other thing I do want to mention, we've said this before, we have these booklets. The one I've got in my hands
They're
here
awesome.
has about 15 pages, but they're just a little booklet. You've said that you can read these in about 10 minutes,
Yep,
right?
that's right.
And so here's the one on a crisis in education, a good example. The first part talks about the fact that, we're not really teaching kids. Can you imagine putting a 6-year-old in front of a computer and asking them to pay attention all day? I don't think so. But then I go on to talk about educational failure, educational illiteracy, educational indoctrination, and what a biblical view of education is. Well, that's just one of those, but these are the resources we want to put in your hand, not only so that we can educate you even off air, but then I've found, and you've noticed this as well, all sorts of people say, can I get a whole stack of these and hand these to my Sunday school class?
Yes.
Or I've noticed a lot of parents lately have said, can I give this one on socialism to my kid that just came back from college and sort of has a brain full of mush because of all the things he's or she has been learning on the campus? So these are just, again, resources we're putting in your hands and really trying to provide as much of the resources that you need so that you can be more effective. And as over the years, we've had individuals that said, I started a pregnancy resource center because of you. I started a Christian school before you. Of course, we've had Michelle Bachmann said, I decided to run for the state legislature and eventually for Congress and even for the presidency because I used to listen to Marlon Maddox.
There's a distinctive that has come to my mind as you've just been sharing, and that is we use the Bible as our ultimate authority and source of information. And I think that's a distinctive because I don't know any other talk shows that use the Bible like we do every single day. That is the beacon of truth. That is the foundation of our Christian faith. And ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to allow us to continue to do that tomorrow, next week, next month, and next year. Your gift, A Point of View, will make a difference for eternity. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Why don't you join us? If you're committed to truth, we'd love to have you be a part of us.
So again, we're going to take a break, and when at top of the hour come back, we'll spend just a little bit of time kind of giving you an update on how we've done on the match, and then we're going to go to our good friend Gary Bauer, and he was, of course, Chief Domestic Policy Advisor under Ronald Reagan. He's been writing quite a bit about what has happened in terms of foreign policy, but we'll also get his comments about the crisis at the border. So perfect time to call. You don't want to miss what he's going to be saying. 800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. We're going to focus a lot of our time and attention on China, and then we're going to move on to some other topics as well. In just a few minutes, we'll be talking with our good friend Gary Bauer, and I might just mention we've posted one of his pieces that comes from the End of Day Report. In case you're not familiar with that, that will give you some of that information. Of course, you can sign up to receive that as well. The article underneath it is one by Senator Tom Cotton. What the United States must do to beat China. Now, he doesn't mean militarily, but he means economically. He says that in a sense, we're in a Cold War, an undeclared one. We used to have a Cold War, for those of us that remember, with the Soviet Union, but we really are sort of in a Cold War, which will determine what happens in China over the rest of the century. And he says to sweep Chinese communism into the ash heap of history, which is again a Ronald Reagan phrase, we must wage an economic long war through targeted decoupling and rigorous economic competition. He gives lots of examples, but there's some things that we can and should do. One of those is to rescind permanent normal trade relations with China. Also to review China's most favored nation status, which we gave years ago. This is a country, if you're thinking about human rights, certainly violates that. If you're concerned about the fact that there has been systemic cheating and theft and espionage dedicated to destroying American jobs, well, that's been taking place as well. And even the attempt to maybe in this country rebuild some of the essential manufacturing in this country. You remember the ones that we were told under the previous administration before Donald Trump came in that those jobs are gone. And then Donald Trump brought some of them back with various kinds of things that can take place. The estimates here are that China commits up to 80% of the international intellectual property theft and those kinds of issues. And then we have allowed a lot of Chinese students here, about 370,000. Many of them are certainly individuals that have contributed to this society, but there are also some that ultimately end up having to work, if not officially, spies, unofficially those. And of course, we have all sorts of ways in which the Communist Party has bankrolled colleges and universities, even professors. And so these are some really important issues that need to be addressed. And again, kudos to Senator Tom Cotton. This piece that appeared is one that I would encourage you to read, and it comes from National Review. Just a minute ago, I also mentioned something else, but it's worth coming back to. You have, for example, the editorial board now of the Wall Street Journal, in which they say the warning of China to Joe Biden is that what happened in Alaska, and we'll talk about this in just a minute with Gary Bauer, they say shows that our adversaries sense a weakness on the part of this president. And so that's a real concern as well. So we'll talk about that. And then I mentioned this one by Ian Hainsworth. Biden is weak and our enemies know it. And it isn't just necessarily China, because then he goes on to even talk about Russia. And of course, you might have noticed the back and forth between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin, because at one point Joe Biden was asked in an interview with George Stephanopoulos, do you think he's a killer? And he said yes. So then Putin says, well, I'm ready to have a debate with you. As a matter of fact, he said, I would even wish him good health, which is a way of kind of joking about the fact that you're not even healthy enough to interact with me, much less do a debate. So these are some issues that need to be addressed as well. And they go along with with all the other issues we talk about, whether it's abortion or whether it's homosexuality or the transgender issue, whether it's the crisis in education, all the certainly issues that we talk about in terms of the economic issues yesterday or media bias. And in studio with me is Brad Fisk. And Brad, this is the whole breadth of all the kinds of issues we talk about almost every single day here on Point of View.
You did that whole thing in one breath. I'm amazed at that. I mean, really, we're just overwhelmed with what's going on around us, but we don't need to be. We come to you a couple times a year. We call it Truth Team Week, and this is one of those weeks where we come and say, by the way, we are listener supported. We don't have commercials or big underwriters or any of that kind of stuff going on. We are dependent on you to continue to be a voice, almost 50 years of voice in the marketplace. So let me just walk you through. We would like to invite brand new donors. If you've never given before, please consider a gift to Point of View. Some of you have the means to do, $1,000 a month. We have people doing that. We have people doing $500, a single gift. So the size of the gift is between you and the Lord, but we're asking you to participate. Our theme this year is committed to truth. So I turn it right around and ask you, are you committed to truth, to God's biblical truth? We are, and we'd like to continue to have that voice in the marketplace. Pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or you can give by calling us at 800-347-5151, 347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
Oh, I thank God for what you're doing on Point of View. You guys have more influence across this country than I believe any of them in terms of tackling the issues and getting the truth out to Americans. It's getting to the point where truth just is bottled up on every hand. Every time you turn around, there's another big bottleneck against truth. I hope your listeners realize what Point of View is doing and supports Point of View in every possible way you can.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
I always wanted to give because I thought that Point of View really brings a lot of things in out here in the open that you don't hear anywhere else. And I knew when I was hearing on there, well, I could count on it being something that you could check into it and the proof would be there. I didn't have to wonder, well, where did they make that stuff up from? I just know that it's going to be facts. That's what I call true journalism and putting the stuff out. I really think that's great.
Point of View Truth Team.
Back once again, Brad Fisk in studio, and in just a minute we're going to talk with Gary Bauer, but I think we have another announcement, don't we?
We have a brand new $1,000 dollar-for-dollar match challenge on the table as of right now. So every gift you give is doubled at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. You can also give online anytime at pointofview.net, pointofview.net.
You just said a minute ago that you're looking for monthly donors,
yes.
And I have noticed that our bills come in monthly, so if the income comes in monthly, we're a lot better off. So what does that entail in terms of making that commitment?
The $1 a day is it's a kind of a joining level, you might say. It's something most people can handle, and again, the amounts between you and the Lord, but we'd love for you to consider that $50 a month level because we have some really cool gifts this year to hand out to you as a thank you gift. Thank you for that level of commitment, and $100 a month as well at our century level. But the key is everybody doing their part because you are the ones that keep us going. Without you, we have nothing to do because we won't be on the air. Pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or give us a call, 800-347-5151. Every dollar you give is doubled.
And again, so we're going to take a break, and we'll come back and talk with Gary Bauer. So you definitely want to make this call right now so you don't miss anything. 800-347-5151. We'll talk about the crisis on the border. We'll talk about China. But most importantly, we encourage you to go to the website, pointofview.net, or you can give us a call right now. Still some people taking some phone calls, 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
It may be the most useless number you've never heard of in government. That number is what is called the social cost of carbon. The Obama administration created it years ago as an instrument to argue against fossil fuels and to argue for radical environmental policies. On his first day of office, President Biden issued an executive order resurrecting the Obama-era social cost of carbon. When it was first created, the cost was estimated at $22 a ton. 2 years later, the administration raised it to $36 a ton and eventually landed at $51 a ton as President Obama left office. The Biden administration issued a report last month putting the possible damages at $51 a ton for carbon dioxide emissions. This latest updated version will certainly go higher, since the White House has said that it will factor in commitments under the Paris Climate Treaty and also consider such issues as environmental justice and intergenerational equity. Here's my prediction. By the end of the year, the social cost of carbon will be estimated at more than $100 a ton. There is really no reason to believe this number for the social cost of carbon is based on rigorous science and economic evaluation. I was reading one paper that made the case that the benefits of carbon dioxide actually outweigh the cost substantially. Forests, grasslands, and various crops, for example, show greater growth when there is more carbon dioxide. The next time we have an unusual weather event, expect the social cost of carbon to be mentioned, and a cost of that weather phenomenon will be used to raise the cost even higher. It may be a number you've never heard of, but that's about to change. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
It would be tragic if Point of View did not exist, because not many programs are targeting areas where we need to learn how to think, where we need to learn how to respond, where we need to learn what our options are for active involvement, even how we can share truth with other people. And because Point of View is relevant, dealing with relevant topics, with real people, presenting real answers, it's right where people are, and it's meeting a very real need. This is a wonderful opportunity you have to literally help the ministry be the most effective that it can be through your gifts, through your financial support. I highly recommend it.
June Hunt talking about the importance of supporting this ministry in the midst of course, our Truth Team Week. Committed to Truth is the theme. Brad Fisk in studio, and we have a match on the table.
We do a $1,000 match on the table. Every dollar is doubled up to that, and we just invite you to participate. 800-347-5151.
Well, we've been looking forward to this conversation with Gary Bauer. First of all, we've posted one of the pieces from his end-of-day report, Eating Joe's Lunch. In addition to that, we have a piece by Senator Tom Cotton, What the U.S. Must Do to Beat China. So we'll talk about China first. We'll get into, of course, the immigration issue. Gary Bauer, of course, president of American Values, also the chairman of the Campaign for Working Families, was the domestic policy advisor for Ronald Reagan. And, of course, you worked at Focus on the Family, and that time he was a senior vice president, Focus on the Family. And Gary Bauer, as always, welcome back to Point of View.
Hey, Kerby, great to be with you. Great to be with Brad. And I was listening, of course, to your promotion of Truth Week, and I couldn't help but notice the irony that I work in a city that seems to be devoted to the exact opposite. I mean, there's that old joke, how can you tell when a politician's lying? The answer is his lips are moving.
And you have been saying that lately a lot in your end-of-day report. We encourage you to support Point of View, but I also encourage you to support American values. Gary, as you well know, my wife and I support what you are doing, and sometimes we talk about giving one or the other. I think most people could give to both American values and Point of View because you are such a kindred spirit for us here at Point of View.
Well, thank you, Kerby. And I really do appreciate the donations that you and your wife make to my work, and I, as you know, I'm a great admirer of you and Point of View, and I can't explain to your audience. I don't even know how many times. It's probably been hundreds of times over the years that you have graciously invited me on the program, and I've been able to help you alert your listeners to what's happening in Washington that could affect their families, their businesses, and their freedoms.
I do want to talk about China. It's not something we talk about all the time, although we've had Gordon Chang on this program. We've had you as well. The editorial board of the the Wall Street Journal, I'll take that one first. A lecture in Alaska shows that adversaries sense U.S. weakness. Ian Haysworth, Biden is weak and our enemies know it. And this particular meeting between Chinese officials and American officials up there in Alaska did not go well, which is why I posted your piece on Eating Joe's Lunch, which came from your Friday end-of-day report. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, it's one of those things that didn't really make a lot of headlines, and certainly the average American still dealing with the COVID crisis and the economic issues we're facing could be forgiven if they didn't spend a lot of time worrying about what was said between Chinese Communist representatives meeting in Alaska with officials from the Biden administration. But it really was extraordinary and in my view, almost obscene, because we had the Chinese Communist officials who, keep in mind, they are literally, according to the previous administration and even some officials in the Biden administration, they're involved in a genocide against an ethnic group called the Uyghurs in communist China. They've put several million people in camps. But beyond that, they're a surveillance state. Half of all the surveillance cameras in the world are in communist China. They watch every move their citizens make. The Chinese communists think they're going to replace us on the world scene. They've declared war against all religious faiths. And here they are meeting with us in Alaska, and they attack our human rights record. In fact, they use the language that we often hear the political left in America hear, that we're a racist country, that we were founded on racism, just a lot of really ridiculous and terrible things they were saying. And lo and behold, Kerby, the American representatives, including our Secretary of State, instead of what I think he should have done, which is storm out of the room in protest, he instead says to the Chinese, well, certainly we've made mistakes and we've had problems, but every day we're trying to be better. And they're talking to one of the most repressive regimes in the world. So if our government officials won't defend the United States against the likes of communist China, I don't know who will.
Well, again, Secretary of State Antony Blinken basically probably couldn't respond very much because that was his leftist talking point. Yeah. And that's the problem when you have individuals that buy into some of the rhetoric of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, some of the leftist rhetoric on college campuses, and the kinds of things that are expressed in some of the kind of left-wing media outlets. When they are confronted by that criticism, instead of pushing back, they go, and they start looking at their shoes. And that's not exactly the position we want to be in when China wants to, as we've already talked about, eat our lunch, right?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, look, I think Americans are catching on to this. There's been a dramatic change in the public opinion polls in the last year about communist China. But to just sum it up, the leadership of communist China believes 100% that America's day is over, that we've run things for a number of decades, but now we are a world power in decline. And they are telling their own people that China's day is coming, communist China's day is coming, that they are going to call the shots in the world in the days and years ahead. They believe that, and they're preparing for that. They're building up their military. They're threatening their neighbors. They're robbing us blind, stealing our technology, hacking into all kinds of computer accounts in the United States. They've got a presence on our university campuses. They're routinely caught spying on us or compromising even elected officials under various circumstances. So they're being very aggressive. And meanwhile, we seem at this point to have an administration in power that thinks it's all a big misunderstanding, or that the most important thing is that we get communist China to cooperate with us on something like global warming or climate change.
Incredible. We're going to take a break, and of course we could also add to that Russia and Vladimir Putin wishing him better health and all those kinds of things. We want to debate him, but when we come back from the break, I want to get into another issue, because your Monday end-of-day report, boy, this is good PR for the American Values end-of-day report.
But it's a great product. I read it every day, Kirby, I'm telling you.
But migrants for Biden. And of course, I live here in the state of Texas, and we were talking to some people said down at the border, I've seen more Biden T-shirts from migrants than I saw the Democratic National Convention.
Boy.
So we're going to come back and talk about that. But we have a match on the table, Brad, and we need to remind people that they can respond.
Hey, we're just inviting you to come to the table and help stand with us. Help us be committed to truth, the biblical truth, day in and day out. That's what Point of View is all about, and that's why we ask you to help us. Invite new donors. We want to invite you to come. We want to invite larger donors, any size, any gift amount, monthly, single gift. The idea is full participation. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or you can go to pointofview.net. pointofview.net.
When we come back from the break, we'll talk about the crisis on the border. I guess it's called a challenge. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But we have pictures from one of those by the border there at the Facebook page for Point of View Radio. So you can see those as well. And as you go there, just another resource that we're making available. But again, as we take a break, I know you don't want to miss anything from Gary Bauer, so this would be a perfect time to make that phone call. 800-347-5151. Got a match on the table. And we certainly want to meet that before the top of the hour, so let's do that. And again, you can also go to the website, pointofview.net. If you join at $1 a day, $30 a month, tremendous benefits that we will actually provide to you. 1-800-347-5151 or pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
The definition of being committed is dedication, loyalty to a cause, wholeheartedly invested. It can also mean being involuntarily placed in an institution like a mental facility or a prison. Now follow me here. People who believe some of the things now supported by our federal government used to be subjected to the second definition. In Nineveh, the Bible tells us that people couldn't tell the difference between their right hand and their left. But in today's America, we don't even know the difference between a man and a woman. If you're committed to truth, then I urge you today to join the Point of View Truth Team. Kerby is committed to providing you the information you need to stand for what is right and what is ultimately good for everyone. But he cannot stand alone. We need you to be committed, invested in the cause. Sign up today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation today with Gary Bauer in just a moment. But again, we'll look at the Monday edition of the End of Day Report on migrants for Biden. And again, there are some things here that just make you shake your head. But Brad, first of all, we have a match on the table. And according to this is part of our Truth Team Week, Committed to Truth.
That's right. That's a $1,000 match, dollar for dollar. And we're inviting you. We're grateful to you for standing with us, standing for truth with a capital T, simply by calling and giving 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. And of course, you can always give 24/7, 365 at pointofview.net. pointofview.net.
Gary Bauer, let me come to you before we get into the whole issue of migrants, because you have been on our radio program, like you said, for a long time. You do your own weekend talk show. You've been on both sides of the microphone. But what's the value of Christian radio? What's the value of the program Point of View?
Well, it's incalculable, Kerby. Sadly, we live at a time where we've sort of segued in recent decades from a media that's sort of leaned to the liberal side to a media overall now, and it's called mainstream media, but it's nothing close to being mainstream. It's almost a blackout of any kind of news or facts or developments that Christian families, conservative people would have an interest in, would want to know about, would need to know if they're going to take appropriate steps to defend their own interests and their own values and their own liberties. So without Christian outlets and Christian conservative talk and just a handful of alternatives that we have, like Point of View and you, there would be no place to get a good bit of the information that is happening every day that affects our country and affects the world. And you get the information in an accurate way. And of course, on this show, you get action steps that you can take to do something about it, so you don't have to just sit there and feel helpless as events wash over you. So it is a rare thing these days, and you could make an argument that, quite frankly, it's one of the few things that helps us stop the onslaught, the attack on family, faith, and freedom.
And again, he was talking about the action items. We have the one right now on H.R. 1. We've had them on H.R. 5, H.R. 8. We can go through the long list. But one of the other things that I thought we might spend some time doing is we do have a crisis at the border, even if the administration doesn't admit it. But if you read your end-of-day report, we have, of course, today posted some pictures that came from Representative Henry Cuellar, who, by the way, is a Democrat, but posted some pictures of what those camps look like. But you point out that if you go to one of the migrant camps, the flag flying over the camp, well, it's not an American flag, but it's not even a Mexican flag. It's a Biden 2020 flag. Unbelievable. And it just illustrates, again, some things that aren't even being covered by the press.
Yeah, it really is unbelievable, and it's also very telling. I mean, we've seen this over the last few weeks, or at least you've seen it and heard about it if you're listening to Point of View or if you're watching a few other media outlets. But we've had people coming across the border with Biden T-shirts. It just seems like a very strange thing to see happening. And now we get these videos out of migrant camp in Tijuana, where there's not only a lot of people wearing Biden T-shirts, but there's this huge Biden 2020 flag flying. And when the people in the camp are interviewed, it's very clear why they're showing these things that's got Biden's name on it. They believe that he has promised them free health care, free entry into the country, a free education for their children, and quite frankly, Kerby, he has. I mean, I see a lot of commentators saying, oh, my goodness, the new president's made a mistake. He's miscalculated. I don't really think it's a mistake. If you go back to the campaign and the Democrat presidential debates, he was very clear about this. He said in Iowa in early 2020 that he thought the United States could take 2 million migrants a year into the United States. And a number of the debates, he said that he thought migrants and illegal immigrants and others should get free health care. Well, if you're living in a Central American country and dealing with the problems in that country, and the leader of a powerful nation to the north of you is promising you things that you can't imagine, again, free education, free health care, free housing. We just learned this week that they're now going to spend $86 million of the American taxpayers' money to put migrants entering the country up in hotel rooms. By some estimates, we've got 30,000 at least homeless veterans in the United States. Are we going to put them up in hotel rooms? We've got National Guard troops here in Washington, D.C. that have been guarding the Capitol, and they're sleeping on the floor of parking garages. So something is really skewed here, and I don't think in Biden's mind that he made a mistake. He may be a little surprised by what his policy changes are doing, but it was totally predictable, and I think he wants millions of new people to enter the United States.
Of course, we can add to that something you talk about in terms of flying these immigrants on an airplane. Sometimes the first time they've ever been on an airplane, and they're flying to places where we broadcast, like in Maine or New Hampshire, or even in the Midwest, up in Minnesota, Wisconsin, other places like that. And of course, oh, by the way, don't we have a COVID-19 crisis? So what about that?
Yeah, you know, we the president reminds us every day that we have that crisis. He tells us that we need to keep wearing our mask and, of course, to get vaccinated, and that we need to worry about social distancing. And he said the other day in a televised address that if we do all those things, we might on July 4th be able to have a few people over for a 4th of July hot dog. Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Meanwhile, many of our schools are still closed and so forth and so on. And yet at the border, we are taking thousands of people pouring into the country. We're putting them in the facilities with no social distancing. In most cases, we're not testing them for COVID. In a few cities where local authorities tested them, they're finding anywhere from 8 to 12% of the people entering the country, in fact, do have COVID. Now we're putting them on planes and flying them to northern states along the Canadian border and putting them in immigrant facilities there. None of this makes sense while we're still reeling from the coronavirus and we're still dealing with the economic fallout from that pandemic, where we have somewhere between 9 and 11 million Americans unemployed.
Unbelievable. Well, again, you have done such a good job of summarizing some of the issues, and that's why we need to stay vigilant. It's why we need to educate people and motivate people, empower them. And I know that's certainly what you've been doing through American Values. We have a link there so people can get your end-of-day report. We've reprinted one of those from Friday so people can read it in its entirety. And so, Gary, thank you for being such a great friend of Point of View. And just before we let you go, any last words to our possible donors out there listening?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Kerby, I'm a little bit older than you, and I'll make a confession. I every once in a while get up and go, why am I still doing this? Well, I suspect that if you ever have a day like that, and I doubt if you do, you would come up with the same answer that I do. I think, you know, that God has put me here. I know He's put you where you are. We're on the same team, just like Brad is. We're trying to keep this country to a shining city on a hill that was based on the idea that liberty comes from God, not from government. For your listeners, and particularly those that support my work, I really, from my heart, want to ask you today, while you're thinking about it, while you're listening to this show, make a donation right now. The work I do in Washington is impossible if there aren't places like Point of View and men like Kerby Anderson helping to get the word out. And Kerby, I'm proud to be on the same team with you and with Brad, and I know better days are ahead for our country, but we all have to stand strong and invest in your show and in this work, because it really in many ways is a ministry, and without that investment, there's no way we can win this battle.
Thank you so very much. And again, we're going to take a break. You can give us a call at 800-347-5151 at pointofview.net. Gary Bauer, you're a great friend. Thank you for joining us. But again, let me just encourage our listeners real quickly to give us a call, because we're almost out of time. 800-347-5151. Every dollar double.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else, because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
The things that catch my attention are the abortion issue, and it's so important for people to understand the value of life. And to me, that is number one in our lives. And the shows that I've heard on that have impacted. It just gives me kind of a different venue to be able to explain things differently to people. And I have kept in touch with the ministry, and I do donate each month because I feel like it's an important way for people to understand the worldview and that Christ taught, And we have just tried very hard to instill that in our children. Thank you so much for your service, guys, because you do have one.
Back once again, and just before we finish off today, we want to get an update. But let me just mention real quickly, and I'll come back to this in a minute, that we have a very good piece that I haven't mentioned, but it's a good summary of what we've talked about. It's by Victor Davis Hanson, Follow the Science, they said, and it gets into all the issues we've discussed, and so we'll get to that in just a minute. But Brad, give us an update, because we are looking for some people that might want to join us on a monthly basis.
We are. We really value the single gift. It is Truth Team Week. We're committed to truth. That's the theme, and we're asking you, just as we pay our bills by the month, we're asking you to seriously consider becoming a monthly giver. That $1 a day at $360 a year is an entry level that's comfortable for a lot of people. But stretch a little bit, maybe $50 a month, and we've got some special welcome gifts you can look at online to see what you get at that $50 a month level. But they're really cool bags that you can just go to the website and look. Anyway, here's the phone number to join us, whether a single gift or a monthly gift. Your best gift, is that what we're looking for right now? Your very best gift, 800-347-5151. We have lines open at 800-347-5151. You can always give at pointofview.net, pointofview.net.
Point of View Truth Team.
You know, I can't go to Washington. I can't do those things, so the only way that I can help is the way that God has provided for me, and to give some of that back to you guys. So, like you said, partnering with Point of View, because, you know, you can't do it alone. Thank you very much for what you guys do. Believe me, it's a needed thing, and I just hope everybody certainly would get on the bandwagon with you.
I can't afford not to support you. Point of View gives me a voice, and I just appreciate you. And I've been here listening for years, so I thank you, and I do. Again, I said I can't afford not to support you, because I want you to keep going.
I'm 25 years old, and I started listening to Point of View about 4 years ago, and it has changed the way that I think and the way that I view the world around me.
My husband and I are your supporters. We just really appreciate the show and the people you bring on.
Point of View Truth Team.
Back once again, let me just mention real quickly, as I said just a minute ago, that we've posted these articles, everything from the piece by Colonel Alan West, the piece by Gary Bauer, the piece by Senator Tom Cotton. We talked about the echo chamber, but this one by Victor Davis Hanson is kind of a good summary, because he talks about how in some cases people will say, well, it's the science. And he first of all takes on some of the misinformation that was presented that we tried to clarify in terms of the pandemic, the question of the various kinds of quarantines. Even has a piece there, which we've talked about before. Remember how everybody was so concerned about the mental acuity of Donald Trump, but then all that just vanished as soon as Joe Biden shows up. And then this whole issue now of hate crimes, and then some others dealing with fencing and bias and vaccinations and on and on. One of the things we try to do so often here, Brad, is to just kind of cut through some of that. Actually, 2 of my degrees are in science, so sometimes when somebody's saying something that's not scientific, I can pick it out. And we want you to know truth, and we are committed to truth. And I think Victor Davis Hanson has covered a lot of the issues we've even talked about here today, and said just because somebody says, science says, follow the science, sometimes it's follow the bias of an individual, and we're trying to cut through some of that. And that's why we challenge you and encourage you to support us right now, 800-347-5151.
You know, it occurred to me a moment ago that we haven't specifically called out and asked for those of you with means that could do this to give $1,000, to give maybe $1,000 a month, maybe a $5,000 single gift. Those have extra zeros, but you know, we know there are people out there who have that capacity, and we're simply asking you to pray and obey. Ask God what he would have you do and simply do it. But that's not to say that that $5 a month is not important to us, because that would be untrue. We are grateful for every single person standing with us. And if you can't give right now, we know a lot of people are in very difficult situations. You can pray. Doesn't cost anything to do that. So we invite you to join the family, won't you? 800-347-5151. We're here for you. We're here for you every single day to bring you truth with a capital T. 800 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. And just write this down, pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. You can give there at any time.
You know, tomorrow we will be getting into some other issues, and John Stonestein will be with us. And, of course, he's with Breakpoint. And, of course, we had a chance to hear his voice today, so that will be one. Josh McDowell, of course, you know him only so well. And I saw a great interview that his son, Sean McDowell, did with Josh McDowell, so we're going to ask him about that. And so those are some other things coming up. But as we go to the end of the program, and we're just about out of time, let me encourage you to do a couple things. First of all, to go to the website, pointofview.net. You can click on the banner to give. My Viewpoints commentary today is what I call the most useless number you've never heard of, called the social cost of carbon. And this is an attempt to give you an idea of how, and this administration is going to try to argue against fossil fuels and argue for a radical environmental idea like the Green New Deal. And so you may have heard of the Green New Deal. You might say, I never heard about the social cost of carbon. Well, we're trying to put you on the cutting edge of those kinds of issues. We have the take action items. And of course, we have all the articles we've posted. And Brad, that's really what people are supporting, not only the program that is on the air, but also these articles that we post, My Viewpoints commentary, which you've been out talking to other radio stations that may carry those as well. It's amazing how many actually hear that commentary. And that's just my attempt to take some of the things we learn here on Point of View or other material and put it in a cogent format, along with, of course, these booklets, which you can read in about 10 minutes. So we recognize that you're busy. You don't have a chance to read all of this, but we try to make it as easy for you as possible so that you're on the cutting edge of the kind of issues that we're going to be dealing with here in the 21st century. So one last time, we're just about ready to go off the air. Even though we go off the air, we'll still take phone calls, 800-347-5151. But I might also mention that any time of the day, you can go on pointofview.net. And that's a good place to find out a little bit more about how you can support this ministry and some of the thank you gifts that we'd be glad to send to you.
You know, as we heard from Gary Bauer, it was very important when he pointed out about truth-telling. And that is one of the things that will be distinctive here. We will always, always tell the truth. That's the business we're in, and to bring you up to speed on what's going on there. So we're asking you to give in these final moments, 800-347-5151. How about 10 of you at $1 a day, another 10 at $50 a month? Come on, you guys, join us. Won't you? 800-347-5151. Join the Point of View team. 800-347-5151. Well,
Brad, appreciate you being here. I certainly want to thank Andrew and Steve for their help as well. Tomorrow, John Stonestein, Josh McDowell. But even as we go off the air, give us a call right now, 800-347-5151. Of course, the website, pointofview.net. This is Tuesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow right here on Point of View.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.